Welcome to this episode of the Sneaker Principle Podcast, Zuchain Joku. And I received a direct message, and I want to read it to you. And this was on LinkedIn. The message says, Dear Sneaker Principle, as a veteran NYC educator, I've seen leadership come and go. Every new chancellor brings new promises, but on the ground, many of us feel like nothing truly changes. With the possibility of Kamar Samuels becoming the next chancellor, it's not a possibility, folks. It is official. He is the chancellor of New York City schools. So continuing, I'm wondering, what does real leadership look like in a system this big? How do we stay focused on students when politics, mandates, and fatigue threatens to pull us off course? I want to stay hopeful in 2026, but I also want to be honest. How do we lead from the classroom, the school building, the community, when we're not the ones making the headlines? Sincerely, trying to lead without the title. So if I may, I will address you as trying to lead, and I'm going to do my best to respond to this very, very deep message and question. So over the course of my career, which is well over 20 years at this point in time, starting in Los Angeles, then shifting to New York City, spending some time in Clark County schools, specifically in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then continuing on in New York City. The question that you're asking, trust me, you are not alone. It's not just even about New York City and what's happening in New York City right now. I think across the country, it doesn't matter if you're in a major city, if you're in a small town, a small county, big county, whatever the case is, whatever the structure is of your school leadership in your locality, there's always going to be a lot of questions, a lot of nerves, a lot of just trying to figure out what's going to happen whenever there's new leadership. Whether it's a new mayor, I don't know how things are set up wherever you may be, but like in New York City, it's the new mayor, and the mayor has the right to select who or tap who leads the school system. And so the anxiety, the questioning, the wonderings are normal. But what I love about your question is the uniqueness of you asking, how do we lead, in times of change, and especially when you're not the one making the headlines, right? So I'm going to try my best to respond to this. I have 5 points I want to share with you. And hopefully I'll make this as short as possible, and hopefully this will be helpful to you or whoever else who might be listening to this, who might be interested in what you are asking or what I have to say. So the first thing here is, and I'm reading my notes right in front of me here. Number one, so I'm just laughing because this is something that led me through early years in my leadership journey as an assistant principal and a dean. Dean first before becoming assistant principal. And this whole notion of leadership is not positional, it's intentional. And that's why for me, I've never really been like, oh my God, this person who's leading us now, it's the end of the world. No, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a different leader. The leader that you want will not be the one you received, and the one you may receive is not might be exactly what you needed. And that's always been my philosophy. And the most important thing for me is I don't put weight as much in the positional, on the position and positional authority. My weight is on the intention of the leader. And I learned this in the military. Just because you have the bars on your shoulder, lieutenant, second lieutenant, or you got the leaf captain or the eagle, colonel or whatever it may be, or the chevrons, the sergeants and staff sergeant gunnery, whatever, you know, yes, you have the positional authority and the respect that comes with that positional authority. But the true leadership is really your intention, how you lead, how you move the people who are focused on following you. And I'll say this: it doesn't matter whether you're in, especially in education, if you're a para, you're a teacher, you're an assistant principal, you're even a custodian. Leadership begins with how you show up for children, how you show for the students. And that's my question. That's always going to be my focus. And that should be your focus as well. What is the intention, the message around how we're serving the 900,000 children in New York City? Now, my leadership is grounded right now as a middle school principal in the South Bronx on how I am showing up for the 170 kids in my small middle school in the South Bronx. And that's the most important thing, because then it's not about title. It's about influence, because that's what you really have. Just because you show up as in that title doesn't mean anything. It's about who you show up and what you believe in and how you lead in that space with the intention of making sure that the children in this are successful, and that the teachers and the parents, everybody is part of the conversation and getting what they need for the purpose of moving our children forward. Number two, again, connected to number one, it's about staying student centered. Like I mean, you're gonna hear this theme over and over again from me. What does it mean for the children? I often I have to remind people that I work with that, especially the communities that I've worked in, that often, when parents come into the building and the community that we work in, more than not, we earn way more than they do. And I remember years ago, there was a time when, I was really, I won't lie, I was really pissed off. Something happened in my school and I didn't like the way, some of my team members were behaving around a child and a child's parents. I had to remind them in the community where the average household income was about $24,000 a year. I'm looking at these teachers and I'm like, you are in your mid-20s making about $60,000 a year. And you're single, living in the same city when this family's making, not even a third of what you make. And and we're talking about a family, a mother with several children. Like, you have to understand that that we are privileged in the space to serve. So everything we do has to be centered around the child, And again, it's I kind of veered off here. We have to stay student centered and not system distracted. But often what happens is it becomes about the mandates and that way. And these things are going to happen. These things are necessary, but we have to always bring it back to what's most important, and what's most important is always going to be the children. So while policies will shift and power moves will swirl about us all the time, the classroom and community are where real transformation happens. I'm gonna say it again. The classroom and community is where real transformation happens. And that's where we need to anchor ourselves in. We have to stay student focused. Number three, and this is something that I had a hard time trying to find the words for, but I think this is the best way for me to describe it. And what I'm talking about here is cultural, is about culture. Cultural shifts don't require citywide buy-in. Cultural shifts don't require citywide buy-in. Just one hallway one classroom, that one grade team, that one gathering of children to have a restorative circle and have a conversation about what happened and how we're going to move forward as a community. And this is what I call building micro movements in your building. What is the micro movement in your building, or the micro movements? When I took over my present school, MS224 in the South Bronx, the school had struggled for several years. And I'm not going to say that I came in there and performed a miracle. I have experience in working with teams in schools that are struggling and empowering those who are there, bringing in the right people, and really enhancing the talent that already exists to shift culture. And what did we do? We had these micro movements, rebranding the school and having student voice in that space, letting teachers know that they're respected, and that regardless of what they've gone through in the past, that in this current space now, their voice matters, and I would do everything as their principal to really support them and their needs, to ensure that they're best capable and leveraged to support the needs of students. Micro movements, and I could go deep into this, and maybe this needs to be a topic in another end. But you just got to figure out, what are those movements, what are those things here and there you do in your building to really move the school forward. Because at the end of the day, back to the original question, how do we lead from the classroom, from the school building, from the community? It's a movement. Leadership is not just standing on stage saying, I'm the leader. Leadership is also saying, okay, what needs to be done and how are we going to get it done? Who do we empower? How do we, and I know this is an extreme example. Dr. King didn't just stand here and say, oh, we're going to the mountaintop. No. He said, okay, now how do we engage the police? How do we engage those who hate us? How do we show up, even though we want to throw our hands up and fight back and be pacifists in the space, even though we might get our heads bloodied, because again, it's a movement, and the movement itself is going to be louder than any speech, So again, micro movements. What are micro movements in your school community? The number 4 is something that I want to have to give big ups to my first superintendent while as a principal, Rafael Espinal, who was my superintendent when I was in District 12. And as a first year principal, I remember she said to me, how are you documenting your wins? How are you documenting the changes that you're making? And sadly enough, in every leadership program I've been in several of them, and I've mentored many people through leadership programs. The one topic that's not covered that I think is essential is, how to document change. How to document the wins and name the gaps. Because when you walk into a school and you're making the shift that needs to be made for the school's success, often what happens, we're running so fast, we're doing so many things, we don't even realize. We're not even seeing the change. And then when somebody says, hey, wow, this is so different, what did you do? And you're like, I'm not even quite sure what I did. You did a lot of things, but I think you're juggling so much as a leader that you don't get to really see yourself in action. And somebody might say, what does that look like? Listen, keep receipts on impact, photographs, videos, those surveys, and I tell you this, I tell people all the time, listen, you better pull out your phone and interview kids. Start a podcast, bring kids to the table and have conversations, and let those conversations be oral histories of what's happening in the school building. Take pictures, maintain a school blog, or journal. And if something could be as simple as just journaling every day. What are the wins today? But you want to keep that information because it's so important. Because often we don't celebrate what's working, and because we don't celebrate what's working, we're not always able to call out what's broken. Like, what do we need to focus on? We're just kind of like rushing through everything at once, and you don't really know what needs more focus because it's not quite where it needs to be. If you're not celebrating the wins, there has to be a juxtaposition of, okay, this is what we're doing great at right here, but at the same time, wait a minute, these things here can be better, and we know we can get it up because we're doing great over here. Those are the things that are very, very important. So that was number 4. And number 5, this is the hardest one. But as a leader, especially as a principal, and I was also as assistant principals, district leaders, lead loud and with love. Lead loud and with love. What does that mean? The louder the noise from above, the more clarity and calm your students need from you below. I'm not going to just say students, but your teachers, your parents, because often you're the connective tissue between the greater leadership and your school community. So when things are going crazy and you're like, oh my God, I don't know, this is too much. Those that you're leading need you to be the voice of calm, telling them the truth, but also keeping things calm, especially during great times of change. Because again, no matter what's happening outside, when your school day opens, kids are still coming into the building, parents are still expecting their children to be educated, and teachers are coming there to work. Unnecessary distractions stops that or it hinders it. So it's very, very important that you are the calm, that you are there steady. And again, I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks or months, but no matter what, like I said in my last episode, we need to pray for our leaders. We need to be supportive. We have to be hopeful. It's very important. But we also need to be the calm that our school communities need, especially during times of great change. I hope that this is helpful. I probably didn't answer the question, but I just wanted to acknowledge this question because it's very powerful. And I'll be honest with you, I am excited. I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. But I also know that when I walk into my building on Monday, that I have to still be principal in Njoku. I still have to be the in boot camp, the guidon bearer, the guidon bearer, and the guidon is the flag. The flag that says 224. My job is to hold that flag up so those that are following can say, okay, we know where we're going. There's leadership here, and making sure my team as well are walking with me side by side to make sure the 170 children in my school are being served and being loved and being protected and being prepared for high school. And I hope that you do the same thing in your school, whether it's elementary, if it's early childhood, middle school, or high school. That is the focus. So trying to lead without the title. Thank you so much for your question, and I really appreciate that. And those of you who hear this and you're like, hey, I have a question. Hit me on DM. I post these episodes on LinkedIn, and I will I'm very easy to find Uche L Njoku EDM, And if you come across this video on YouTube, you can send me a question there as well, and I'll do my best to answer. And with that being said, thank you so much, and till next time, be well.